All right, first, let me start by again saying thank you to all of you. We may have a concentration of the busiest people at the university here who are taking on something more than they already had on their plate. And so just expressing gratitude. And also to testifying after doing this for a semester, what a great blessing it's been in my life, right? And it's been a blessing because I am experiencing teaching in a way that I haven't experienced in a long time. One where and this is something that other folks have been teaching it right now feel as well, that oftentimes we feel somewhat adversarial in our teaching, right? Or there's at least a little bit of that. And there's none of that, or almost none of that in the experiences that I've had this semester, where you actually get to just be open and share and say, these are the things that are important to me, let me help you. And so my goal today is to talk about two things that are important for course management. Well, one that's important for course management, and one that is the place that you get to imprint this class in a way that's uniquely yours, and that's the case study that we have. So first of all, how do we grade? And this is the nature of our students. It's one of the things that stresses them out. And I think that we need to have a really clear vision of what it means. They come in with a high school understanding of what pass fail means. It means 61%, right? That is passing, failing is 60 or below, or 59 and below, whatever it was. That is not the vision. It's in fact so much not the vision that we actually, as of a week ago, have a brand new grade rule at the university. This class is not being graded pass fail. It is being graded credit, no credit, which is significant in a whole bunch of ways. Pass fail is a grade rule that is set up where if you pass the class, you get 2 credits on your transcript, but it doesn't impact your GPA at all. If you fail, it does, and it's unrecoverable failure. That is, if you come back and you take the class again, you don't lose the 0 for 2 credits, right? This credit, no credit model is that when you have met the learning outcomes, you get credit for the class. And that credit is that you get 2 credits that count towards your general education, and it's required for graduation. No credit means, hey, you got to try again. Right, and it doesn't change their GPA. That it just shows up as an NC on their transcript. And so what's really important is in terms of grading for the class is that the grading is perfectly aligned with the learning outcomes. Your role as the person that assigns the grade is that the students have demonstrated competence in the 4 learning outcomes. 4 learning outcomes are recognize and value the unique community purpose, mission, and aims of BYU and connect those to their own spiritual and educational goals. Be confident accessing campus resources related to academic success, personal resilience, see spiritual, emotional, physical, social, and financial resources on campus. Have the character essential for disciple scholarship and contribute to and belong to the BYU community. Right, and so those really are the purpose of, that initial activity that we did. What's this course about? That's what the course is about. But you don't have to do that independent of assessments. You don't have to just have a general good feeling about whether the student has done it or not. The assessments that exist that are being populated onto Learning Suite and onto Canvas align perfectly with those learning outcomes. The first reflection ties to the first learning outcome, the second reflection to the second, the third to the third, the fourth to the fourth, right? So what you need to do is, as you read those reflections, you give them credit as soon as you think that they've met the standard for, did they demonstrate the unique value and community purpose, mission, and aims of BYU and how they relate. The reflection assignment asks them to do exactly that, right? And you say, oh, I think that they did a reasonable job And you've got to decide what reasonable is, but you'll sense it. And then there's attendance readings and digital dialogues. If they aren't doing all of these, it means that they're not meeting the expectations, that they aren't actually demonstrating that they are doing that. At the very end, there's a letter to a new student and a final project where they produce an artifact that represents the things that they've learned in the semester and have a statement that describes why. This is the prompts in this say, reflect on these outcomes and embed those in your writing. And so in the final projects, you're going to see an alignment with this. And then they've got a discovering campus and self-reflection, which really is tying them to part of the BYU community through engagement and activities and describing the campus resources that interest them. Right. So there is this one-to-one alignment. All we're asking to do is you give them credit when they have mastered those things. And so in my class, it turns out that this first one, they were all super engaged in and they did great. They didn't have a problem. The second one, it got a little shaky. And I sent a couple of them back to them and say, yeah, you know what? I think you could do a little bit better with this. And then they did. Right. And then they met the standard. And we don't anticipate giving no credit to very many students, right? That we would like them to be fully engaged, meet those standards, and the work that we're asking from them isn't onerous. Definitely.
I know we never tell the students this, but is there a minimum attendance requirement?
No, and I just tell them they should be attending, and if they miss, I reach out and said, hey, we miss you. So you've got to navigate that yourself. For me, it is when they miss, I want them engaged and say, this isn't something that we just say, okay, that material didn't matter. Okay, can we make sure that you're re-engaged? Let's have you do something a little bit more with the reading that we discussed or something like that. And when it becomes problematic, it's time to talk with them. You know, if they've missed more than 2 classes, then say, hey, you know, you're not going to be able to do what I need you to do to demonstrate that you deserve credit in class.
And then they would repeat the course the next semester.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, actually, I was just curious of the courses that have been completed. I guess there's only been 1 semester so far. What percentage have received credit?
I have to guess 95%. Yeah. The ones that are getting no credit are the ones that engage. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so I'm really struggling with this right now. That was at the end of this semester. So for example, I have the perfect student. He's come every time. Done all of the assignments, very respectful, participatory. But he didn't do any of the events. 3 last activities at the very end. I think, you know, he chose not to do those. Normally I could say, okay, then you get a B, right? But when you go in and I say, you know, you have to do all these things, I'm like, I don't want to fail this kid.
So my philosophy is going to be that one of the things we're doing is modeling being Christ-like instructors and say, we believe in repentance. Hey, this was due, right? And every one of us is going to calibrate ourselves to some extent. You miss the events. And what I want to do is be able to assert that you know that participating in activities and engaging with your peers is a really important part of that. On reflection this semester, have you done something that helps me see that that's something that you can do?
Yeah, I mean, I've reached out to him, right, personally, but I just need that.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's the vision. Really anchor yourself on the reflections, and then it helps. We've only got 25 students. We'll know them well. So here's what the other thing I wanted to do is talk about that we have set aside time for a disciple scholar case studies. So lessons 18 to 21 there's no lesson guide. there's kind of a lesson guide for all four of them. But what I wanted to do is just share with you how I envision this, and maybe that's helpful for you. And there's some really important guiding principles that I think should direct you as you develop this. And this is a section of the course where you're going to pick readings, you're going to share readings that matter to you. You're going to develop the lessons around what you want to do. And here's, after doing this and after reflecting on it, here's what I think we need to do. Always lead with discipleship, right? That I think that there may be a desire to say, oh my gosh, this is my chance to show them what an engineer really does, right? And I'm going to lead out, and it's actually a tendency a lot of us have, that we say, I'm a disciple scholar and I demonstrate it in my classroom because occasionally I will bring a scripture in that helps support the engineering principle that I'm teaching, right? And that's leading with your discipline, not with your discipleship. Right. So as you think about this, right, as you think about your personal life journey, think about how you became a disciple and how that being a disciple led you to the scholarly activities that you're engaged in, not the other way around. Right. And those two things are self-reinforcing, but lead out with who you are as a disciple. The second thing is that it's really easy to make this about you. And it has to be about the students. What you're doing is modeling the process for them, not spending 4 days talking about yourself, right? And finally, it's not about your discipline, because your students aren't going to maybe one in the 25 is going to become an ecologist, maybe. So it can't be about your discipline. You're using your discipline as a way to model becoming a scholar who is committed to the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? So those are the guiding principles. So,
A quick question.
yes.
Because on an earlier session, we talked about sharing our journey.
Mhm.
And yet at the same time, you're also pointing out, you know, I'm just gonna go days about ourselves. Where's that golden mean? Where's the balance of that?
So let me show you how I've sort of oriented on that. One of the things that I think it's really important to do, what's important for me, is to actually get a solid definition of what we mean by disciple, right? And John 13:35 and the primary song capture it beautifully. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love. Right? So when we think about becoming a disciple, it really is about how, and this is the vision of BYU, that it's about how do we use what we do to serve and lift and care for others. Right. And so if we sort of can start with that, and if you actually go to the top of the guide, this is one of the activities we did in one of our lessons, is go to the topical guide and look up disciple. And everywhere in the scriptures that it references a disciple, and what you see is a disciple is almost always acting and almost always serving. Right? And so when we think about a disciple scholar, it's somebody who's actively involved in the gospel of Jesus Christ and is serving others. And this comes back to second century again. This is the requirement in every talk. Second century, the problems that we're showing, or what we're trying to show, is that the work that we're doing is embedded in our discipleship because we're addressing problems that really matter. And President Kimball said this really clearly when he said we should deal statistically and spiritually with root problems, root issues, and root causes in BYU's second century. We seek to do so not in arrogance or pride, but in a spirit of service, right? In that spirit of discipleship, we're addressing problems that really matter. We must do so with a sense of trembling and urgency, because what Edmund Burke said is true. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Again, the definition of a disciple being somebody who is acting, right? I love Richard Hamming is a scientist that worked at Bell Labs for a while, and he tells the story of going around at lunchtime and visiting the physicist table and the chemist table and others, and he kept visiting quietly, the chemist, sorry, Jen. And he kept asking them, like, what are you working on? Why is it important? That they couldn't come up with a good answer. And here's the story he says. He started asking, what are the important problems of your field? And after a week or so, he came back and says, what are the important problems that you're working on? And after some more time, I came in one day and said, if what you're doing is not important, if you don't think it's going to lead to something important, why are you working on it? Right? And that's something that we're really trying to show, is that the students engaging in something that's meaningful at BYU. So I love this model of one's life. You're born, you've got a life path, and there's a whole bunch of nodal points where you left one potential path and you went to another. And this is sort of what we're trying to share with our students. And for me, the ones in discipleship and disciple scholarship that really matter are an introduction for why you chose the root problem that mattered to you, right? And for me, that's because I grew up, my dad was in the military, we moved all the time, and it was as a teenager where I had a scout leader that took us out every weekend, and we were either in the mountains or on the seaside. And that's where I think I first really felt the Spirit, felt God, recognizing who I was as an individual, right? That's where I started developing my commitment to the gospel, what was in nature, and feeling that, but also recognizing sort of the way that humans interacted with nature have an impact in sort of that relationship. And so long before I decided to become an ecologist, the problem that interested me was humans and their connection to the environment. I then was able to serve a mission in the South Pacific, where I also saw some really important social issues, and seeing how people embedded on islands have particular issues, and that further refined the place that I wanted to work. And so let's actually do this. We'll take the time. In 3 minutes, I want you to write down, what are the problems? What are the root problems that really animate you? And who is the person, or what were the experiences or places that led you to those problems? So ready, go. All right, 30 seconds. All right, so that can in some way serve as the nucleus of the first lesson that you have in your disciple scholar lecture, right? Or not lecture, your disciple scholar, the first part of your case study is that somehow the Spirit spoke to you and said, here's a space that I need to be working with. For me, that was the environment. And one of the beautiful things is I could have become an ecologist, or I could have become a humanist, or I could have worked in the Forest Service. There's 100 different pathways within that problem that I could have used. And mine is not unique. And so for our students, one of the first things that they need to be able to do is define what's important to them. And the Ballard Center at the Marriott School does a really beautiful job of this, where they talk about who are the people that you want to serve. And once you understand the person, from that, you can develop what is the system and what is the broader problem you want to deal with. And most of our students sort of go from the experienced to the theoretical in the problems that they want to deal with. Yeah, Mike.
So I noticed that they have a number of students with open majors. Are we trying to encourage them to choose majors? Or is that quite a little bit too low level for us to help them choose majors or explore majors or?
I think that's one of the most important things that we can do is to help them to learn how to receive inspiration on what their path should be and to see what their options are and to recognize that. So I actually start on the first day, what is the problem? And the second day is how do you find your vocation? How do you find the calling that you have that can help you address that? Because one can be interested in immigration and deal with it in 100 different ways. One of those being the law. Right. And so for some of them with their gifts and talents and unique suite of skills, that's the right pathway for them. For others, it's going to be something else. Right. So what I do is in the first day, finding your inspiration, right? So it's sort of where has God spoken to you? I actually, this is sort of where we get to some of the active learning that we do, ask them to reflect on where do you feel the promptings of the Spirit? What are the spaces where you're at? Well, what are the questions or problems that you were particularly drawn toward? What are your strengths and what are the weaknesses that you're inspired to overcome? And then the choices that we make, where are you spending your time and how are you spending it? And on whom are you modeling your life? Right, and getting them thinking about that part of the pathway of a disciple scholar, right? Is receiving revelation. The second one is this idea of finding a discipline or a vocation, and for that I talk to them about the particular gifts that I recognized that I had early in life that I could bring. And also a recognition of the weaknesses I particularly had to work on, right? That those two things are somewhat different. And I'm really open to them about the fact that in high school, I got a D- in public speaking. Because every time I had a speech scheduled, I threw up and I didn't come to school, right? Because it so terrified me of speaking in front of people. And I knew that that's something that I couldn't persist with if I was going to do the things I wanted to do and use the other gifts that I had. And so encourage them to think both in terms of what's really easy for me and what are the hard things that I've got to make easy. So that's the second day. And again, that's part of our pathway. And then for me, the third day was one that was interesting, which was the idea that I recognize that part of disciple scholarship is being dependent on and learning from others. And so what I said is I became an ecologist, I'm a scientist, I do statistics, I do all these other things, but a big part of addressing the problems that I want to address require knowing things that are outside of my discipline, or being inspired by things outside of my discipline. So what we do is I said, here's the poems that have inspired me. Bring a poem that inspires you, right? And we talk about that and we share that together. So we get outside of the disciplinary mindset that disciple scholarship is becoming the best scientist I can be. No, it's becoming the best scientist I can be, who also has the intellectual humility and meekness to know that I still have to learn from others. And then the fourth day is one that is, I think, absolutely essential for students, and it's essential for us. And that is, how can we be open to revelations to change the path that we're on, right? And this goes back to letting God prevail in your life, right? And to share with them all of these important nodal points where you decide to leave Harvard and come to BYU, which in retrospect was essential, but at the time seemed irrational to all your colleagues, right? And that there's all of these things that we've experienced that we can share and model for our students to help them to do it themselves, right? And so in the end, my day one was finding inspiration. I helped them to see the problems that were really important to me. What I had them read is Bishop Cossay's talk, Our Earthly Stewardship, and a section from Rachel Carson's A Sense of Wonder, right? And this idea that I feel a responsibility to the question of nature for a spiritual reason and because of the awe that I feel there. In the same way that Spencer feels about compliant mechanisms, right? Maybe. But this idea that we are motivated as a disciple for spiritual reasons. The second day was just this evaluation of what are the gifts that you have that help you to determine what your life should be, and I'll share with you what mine are, right? And I'll share with you and be really open about the weaknesses that I've had to overcome in order to do the things that I know God wants me to do. Day three became, what can I learn from others? What are the other disciplines that I need to master? And this really sort of pushes into the idea of general education at BYU. Why are you taking that humanities class? It's because humanities is going to make you a better ecologist or a better engineer. And why am I taking Bio 100? Because it's going to enrich a whole bunch of other things. And finally, I think the culmination has to be you modeling how you've let God prevail in your life and help them to understand how to make decisions. And so for me, this has been, I'm sort of a structure guy. For me, this is a structure that works because it starts at the beginning and ends where I am right now. And it's one where it isn't about, let me show you places, and there are places to fill in and say, I could show you where God intervened in my science, right? But he intervened in a way that I was open to because I have committed to letting God prevail, right? And so as this is something you don't actually have to have it fully sketched out until day 16 of the class or day 17 of the class. It shows up on day 18, but it's one that it actually took me those full 16 classes to know what I needed to do for my students. But again, lead with discipleship. It's not about you. It's about modeling for the students, and it's not about your discipline. What it's doing, it's showing the pattern that our students need to follow. And it does come down to what Mike was asking about. We've got a bunch of 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds in our classes that are really anxious about the decisions that they're making, right? That am I choosing the wrong major? Am I choosing the wrong area to work in? And what we're trying to do is to reassure them that as a disciple, you're open to revelation, that you're going to be guided, and that there's these really important nodal points that in retrospect, you'll see God's hand in your life. And so that's, for me, the approach that I think we could be taking that would be productive for our students. Okay. Questions about that? Yeah.
Sorry, Rick. So this is very career oriented. I have this feeling that these 18, 20-year-olds, my parents, are also worried about marriage and dating and life and all these other things that aren't necessarily even career related. have you in your class, have those questions come up and have you sort of modeled how they can make those decisions too?
Yeah, absolutely. Both in some sort of pre-planned ways and in some pretty dynamic ways that when we talk, well, first of all, some of the poetry I share is my wife's, right? Because she's a poet. What are your, that we talk about, I'm really open about sort of the challenges and the opportunities that come with dating. I talked with them a little bit about algorithm development and say search algorithms are really useful when we talk about dating. Right, the best thing that you can do is spend about a third of the time that you can dedicate sort of sampling the environment. And then after you've sampled the environment in the next 2/3 of the time that you have to search, if you find one that's better than any that you saw in the first third, you should choose it because it almost certainly will be in the 95th percentile. So it's some really cool computer science stuff, but that I said, no, seriously, like as you are considering dating, think about the process of sampling. And when you think about careers, think about the process of sampling. Right? Sampling is essential to part of this so yeah, that's what they want to talk about. And the minute you mentioned your personal lives, they light up and they're engaged and share with them your failures as well. Chip's girlfriend broke up with him 2 days into
First day.
of new student orientation. Oh, right, which is a like.
She sampled plenty.
Yeah, anyway, so this is about being open and modeling. This isn't about making future business professors, right? Right.